If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
We're going to have fun?
We're going to have fun.
Okay. I like that.
I've had some little bit of caffeine today also.
Oh, no.
Adds to it. It's either that or alcohol. I'm a good time with either one. I mean,
there you go.
we could just do a shot before we record.
Okay.
I'd love to do caffeine every time, but that really ends up being problematic. I suppose if I did a shot every time we record,
that would also be problematic.
Okay.
Welcome into the Escape Pod. I'm Julie.
I'm Charity.
You are listening to a part serious, part hilarious podcast about escaping all the things true crime,
Hiccups.
trauma, hiccups. I'm afraid of saying that word because I think they're not going to be a problem
Imminent.
if I don't think about it.
Okay.
Whew.
Mind
What are
over
you
matter.
escaping? Trying to make it mind over matter.
Well,
What are you escaping?
First of all, we haven't recorded in a long time. I've been on
We have
vacation.
not.
There's been a lot going on, so
Yes.
it'll be seamless for everybody else, but we haven't been in the studio together for weeks.
Correct.
So, yeah, just back from Breckenridge.
Lovely.
So lovely.
Mm-hmm.
So lovely. I think we have decent restaurants in Rapid City until I go to Breckenridge. And every restaurant is stellar.
Wow.
I'm just like, I just want to live here for the food. I just want to live here for the food. Because then, you can eat all you want. You go hike,
Yeah.
all these miles, and it's amazing. But it was so much fun.
Okay. So
that's-
you're not escaping vacation.
Oh, I have
brain.
what I want to escape too, but I just
You just have to
because I haven't seen you. I haven't seen you for a long time. Yeah.
So tell me what you would like to escape. We're
Well,
in a safe space here.
Well, okay. I just learned something yesterday that I thought was kind of BS. Turns out it's not. It's a thing.
Uh-oh.
So I'm a Gen Xer. What are you? What year were you born?
1980.
Oh, you're right at the end of Gen X.
I'm right at
Okay.
the end. Yes.
Okay. So we're Gen Xers. That's the only perspective we know because that's when we were born. We can't change that. I had an employee who is also a Gen Xer come to me yesterday and tell me that some of our employees that are Gen, Z and Alpha probably, interpret things via messaging, because we use Teams all the time for chats, very differently
Oh.
than we Gen Xers do. And so I'm like, is this just these people, these young people, or is it? And I have a son who's Gen Z.
their age.
And this is not an issue with him.
Okay.
So I've never heard of it. I mean, I have a child that same age, and it's not an issue. Evidently, if you use a period in a text message or a chat message, you're yelling.
Oh. No, you're not.
You're yelling. And at first I laughed because it's like absurd. It's like, okay. And then I went to go research it a little bit. Sure enough, New York Times, this was June 29th, 2021. So this isn't like a fresh thing.
Okay.
No more periods when texting, period, is the title of the article. And I'm like, really? So it's kind of funny because it has this visual, like two little text bubbles. Why do young people think texts that end with periods are aggressive? I thought that was just the correct way to end a sentence. Well, one bubble. There are a few reasons, bubble. No periods or ellipses or anything in any of this. But basically, you don't need them to indicate that your message is ended. So to include them comes across as weirdly formal or yelling in the case of work. So anyway, I read this article and I'm like, this is bonkers.
Well, I'm escaping that way of doing things because I think it's weird when people write as
you're a
though,
journalist.
Yeah, it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
That when I actually had a friend many years ago who said, I proofread my text messages before I hit send to you, Julie, because I know you're proofreading them. And I was like, I can't help it.
You can't
I'm
help
so
it.
sorry. Now, fully recognizing, like, there are typos, autocorrect and I have a very contentious relationship. And so I recognize fully that, it is a text message and it doesn't need to be perfect. And so it's a joke among my friends and family that I do that. But it drives me crazy that people think that, like, proper grammar is not needed anywhere. Drives me crazy.
Yeah.
So sorry.
So that was really
consider
new
me yelling at
information.
you.
I'm going to double down. And I think how you could get around it is you just put one thought. But you know what?
Like a phrase.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
but I am not going to spend my day, because I'm not walking around ever, nor is anyone here trying to insult other people.
Right.
And I'm
No.
sorry, but if you're of the whatever mindset, generation, maturity level, whatever, where a period is going to ruin your freaking day,
Oh, no. Yeah.
there are counselors at schools.
Yeah.
There are mental health professionals.
All over the place.
You can go talk to them about your period issue. But at first I laughed, and then I see how much trouble it's causing one of our employees here who is my age and being perceived incorrectly, highly incorrectly, because she's using grammar and punctuation in the correct way.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh boy. Just when you think you cannot make up any more reasons for people to have conflict, this one little tiny dot that just ends a thought has now become a freaking nuclear explosion. Anyway, I just could not believe it. So that's what I'm escaping today, is the level of ridiculousness that we keep moving towards when there are so many other things to focus on in life. And we're going to give that meaning and make ourselves unhappy over something literally so tiny.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
and anything, I mean, that is kind of that's the hard thing about text in general, and always has been, whether it's formally written or not, is sometimes you miss the context, sometimes you miss the tone, sometimes people simply perceive something a different way than the way you intended when you typed it out. And that's already kind of, you always kind of risk that when you send any kind of message. But I just still value proper grammar. I can't help it.
Also, if you're thinking somebody is out to get you over a text, maybe ask a clarifying question.
Yeah.
Hey, like today we were in a meeting where we had a contract in front of us. Two of us read it in completely different ways, right? And that had correct punctuation, so that wasn't the issue. But it was
wasn't about the periods.
It's our filters, it's stuff. Yeah. So why do we, have a tendency to assume that the world is out to get us, everybody's out to get us, everybody's trying to be mean, when honestly, let's face it, most people are not. They don't give a shit about you. They're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves and what they're going through and what they need to get done during the day. And they're not who has the energy to just go intentionally make somebody miserable? Yeah. I mean, it's pretty silly. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I'm escaping.
Well, speaking of escaping a version of yourself from many years ago, I feel like an old lady when I say I am trying to escape pain in my leg that I can literally attribute to a high school injury. Yep, we're at that age, people.
No. Back in the day when I was...
Yeah. When I was 15 years old, I did have a basketball injury that kind of went untreated.
Oh, I thought you were going to say swimming. I'm
no, it was a basketball injury.
I'm trying to picture, how do you get injured in the water? I suppose you can do it.
You can. That's usually going to be more like shoulder injuries,
I was going to say
things like that.
Rotator cuff kind of things.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
But no, and it has caused me problems every so often over the years, and it's just what's flaring up now. But I do feel ancient when I talk about when people are like, did something happen? I want to be like, 30 years ago, something happened.
I know.
Ish. And I remember it well. I remember well being like, and my coach being like, did you hurt your leg? And I was like, yeah. It's like my hip. And so it flares up at different times. And it actually, not strangely enough, because I know enough now to know when I was in very good shape as a swimmer, specifically in college, a lot of the pain actually went away because I built up muscles that helped alleviate the pain in that particular area. But I am in not that kind of physical shape now. And so it will every so often, like taking a long walk or on the wrong surface.
Yeah.
That's usually what it is. So I just have this weird spot today that if I hit it the right way, I have a hitch.
Yeah.
I have a hitch in my get up. And so it kind of hurts. So there you go. That's what, if I can escape that, I would be thrilled.
Anyway, we will link this New York Times article in today's show notes because it is worth a read. Like if you're wondering why a younger person in your life is not on your wavelength, this could be why. It's actually really insightful, even though I still think it's absurd. But the article is well done. Can I share with you like a hooray too?
Yes, please.
We got an email. She did not give me permission to share her name.
Yeah, so we won't.
I just won't do it. But she says, "Hi, Charity and Julie. I'm a new listener to your podcast. Friend or someone she knows sent me the link to your podcast and told me to listen to episode 5. After listening, I texted her and said, I am Charity. I have a very high ACEs score, and I'm so proud that my daughter's score is 0. I have escaped and broken the cycle too. Thank you for your podcast. I have laughed, cried, and enjoyed every episode. I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate all that you are doing."
That's awesome.
Made me so happy.
So ACEs, for people who don't know the acronym, is Adverse Childhood Experiences. And there was a very long study done, an extensive study done involving ACEs and the effects that it has on us potentially later in life and specific to health effects.
Health outcomes later in life, yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting stuff, yeah.
Well, since you brought it up, because I've always been fascinated with that. What was really interesting about that long-term study is the majority of the people that they surveyed were like middle income, middle class, white people. And when you look at the undeniable correlation between adverse experiences and later health implications in life with a population that would be in today's language privileged, right? And then you look at people like we're serving, majority or minorities. Everybody here is marginalized, either through their ethnicity or through their socioeconomic level or whatever. And obviously it's going to be higher because of the lack of resources. And so we're very well versed in ACEs here. Chad and I are trainers, and you guys have met Chad. He says that's the only test he's ever gotten 100% on, which is not a good thing. He likes to make light of it, and he does. He's a trainer in other arenas as well, and he's very comfortable talking about his adverse experiences. I'm getting there. Yeah, this podcast has made me have to do it a little bit more.
Well, and he's also quick to point out it is just a number. It does not have to define you. Yep. It's just in broader populations, it has shown cancer numbers are affected. Yeah. Heart disease is affected. Things like that. Yeah, it's super interesting. Yeah. But it doesn't have to define you. And the beauty is, and I know a lot of people in my life who are able to say, I have a fairly high ACEs score, my kids have 0. And I have 0. So, but it's that was pretty eye-opening for me as well.
I was with you, I think, when that happened, right?
I was like, I'm a hard 0, and with people who are like,
around her,
I'm an A, like
higher, It was emotional. Julie is has the biggest heart ever. But it is really interesting to think about how a number or a label or a period, like we talked about earlier, we give so much meaning to these things. Yeah. And they just are what they are. Yeah. Can we just honor that and quit making ourselves miserable over things that are the past? Because, quite frankly, every single day is a new day. And we have the choice. We can pick up all of this past baggage and hurt, even from the periods in the world, or the lack of periods, or however we want to look at that, and have it cloud and color our entire day that day. We're already operating at a deficit if we're doing that.
Yeah.
Instead of just going, okay, I can leave those back here.
I use a lot of exclamation points. Is that ill-advised?
That's aggressive. Yes.
What if it's a happy comment?
Exactly. Exactly. It's
I
like,
usually do it when I'm
excited.
happy.
I know.
Yay.
I mean, and if like I have to have a hard conversation with somebody, guess what? Don't do it over text.
No, you should not.
You know, and I understand the younger generations, that's how they communicate.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, I interact with quite a lot of them. Where were we? Oh, I know we were in Breckenridge, and we're watching families that are together. The kids are all at one table, all on their devices, heads down, no one's interacting. And we're just like, and then we had a blast. We were at this other restaurant, and there was this cute family, just cute. I think the oldest kid may have been 5, 3 little kids, no devices in sight. Mm-hmm. And they were having conversations like, well, okay, well, if more than two, this cute kid was so cute. If more than 2 wolves is wolves, then trying to figure out moose and bear and like all this stuff. And so Tim looks at me, he goes, that's what people do when they're not on devices. You talk to your kids, you talk as a family. But it's just...
Did the parents say moose becomes meese? Because I'm just kidding.
Well, that was actually if it's goose and geese, is it moose and meat? Nope, it's not. Is it mooses? Well, actually, I think both are correct. And yeah, English is confusing, son. It was so cute. They were so cute.
Classic.
But we just enjoyed watching that so much because, you know, those are the kinds of things we did with our kids. And guess what? Our kids, one of them, whom is of the age of you text everything. And he does do the thing where each thought is in its own. It's not one text message. Yeah. It's a series, but it's all one conversation.
See, what I don't love about that is the constant buzzing or dinging.
Oh.
Like I always have mine on vibrate pretty much all the time. And so I even get irritated. Like there's days when I'm like, I need to escape this thread and I'll mute it because I'm like, I got work to do. And if I hear the buzz, I am one to be like, what is that? And so I tend to check. And when it goes on and on and on, I have to mute it. 'Cause otherwise I would get zero work done.
We were doing some interviews today and there was a candidate who made it pretty clear, and she's of a different generation than any we've talked about today. I'm not gonna pinhole her or stick a pin in where she's at, but she's like not gonna use emojis in a message, and I'm like, ooh, she would hate our team's feeds here at One Heart because we celebrate, we like have so much fun on Teams just to kind of keep the whole team connected because we're spread out across 4 acres. So I'm like, oh, I don't really think she's going to like that. So
the GIFs, as long as she's okay with GIFs.
GIFs are great.
People are like spot on here. It's one of my favorite. It's an odd thing to have. Let's be honest. I find joy in very simple things.
We could have a GIF showdown one time.
1,000%.
Corey was really good at that.
Corey was maybe the best.
He might have been the best at it.
But we have lots of people who and it's the quiet ones. The quiet ones always have the best gifts.
And they're so quick. My husband's that way.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you search for these or do you just have a file in your head and it's like, oh, I need that one. Bing, bing, bing.
Yeah.
It's like hilarious. Anyway, okay, I'll shut up now.
No. We're kind of on the same lines, though, because we're talking about, you know, what the ways people think and things like that, a little bit of anatomy and talking about, you know, ACEs and the health effects it can have later. And that is a little bit leading to our topic, which is about the brain and how things take it over and cause a lot of problems, correct?
Correct. So I was having this conversation with my friend Brooke months and months ago. So I wrote this a long time ago because it was a really good idea. It was her idea. So shout out Brooke. And she thought it would be fun and not only that, but educational if we did a segment on the 10 signs your spouse, your friend, your whatever, your coworker, whomever, yourself are in crisis brain. And so we use the term crisis brain here. I'm starting to hear it out in different spheres, but I don't recollect hearing that term before we started using it. I'm not saying we're a trendsetter because a lot of times things morphogenetically just kind of happen spontaneously in different parts of the world or whatever. So I started doing research into it and kept coming up time and time again with a term called amygdala hijack.
Okay.
It is the same thing.
Yeah.
So we're using different words to describe the same thing. I'll link out some sources in that. But she thought it'd be fun. And I'm like, yeah.
Okay.
Because it's not just people struggling in the crisis of poverty that we serve at One Heart that this affects. It affects all of us.
Sure.
We get really shocking news. You ever hit that moment where you just cannot process what you're hearing? It's like, nothing's working. Or you've got something really weighing heavily on your mind and you're trying to work and read something. You can't comprehend the words. You know words, but they don't make any sense. They're not going in that context. You can't interpret or really pull out that meaning, that this happens to everybody, everybody. So,
yeah. For me, what I have noticed about myself a little bit this year is because I faced a lot of loss and some really hard, just losing people sometimes they're older. And so I can, that's a little bit easier to deal with. I feel like you've lived a great life, so it's time to go. And so it's easier to let go of those people. But a number of people, 3 of the people I've lost in my life were in their 50s, and that's really hard.
That's
I find that really hard to,
I'm in my
deal
50s.
with. And so I feel like sometimes I have cried so much that I hear something that would normally 2 years ago would have made me cry in a heartbeat. And I find myself not crying.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't hit the same way. And I don't know what that is.
It's a protective mechanism.
It's just like I'm out.
It can also be cried out. You're
Yes,
just done.
I feel like there are times when I am cried out, and then there's other things that normally would not have made me cry that now maybe make me cry. And I think it's just this kind of heightened emotional state that I was in, that I have been in on and off for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's kind of what I attribute it to. But I have noticed sometimes, even on this podcast, you have shared stories that are very sad. And if I were watching a TV show at home at night alone, would 100% make me cry. And sometimes I sit here and I'm kind of unemotional. And I think it's just because there's days I'm out.
You also get into journalism mode though.
A little bit.
Where
yeah.
You'll process it later kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Whereas I don't have that experience.
Yeah.
So I do sit here and cry as I'm telling stories.
I was a strangely emotional news anchor though. That is pretty unusual. Yes. I cried on live television more than once. And there was one time where I was I didn't have a co-anchor.
I cried on city council more than once.
But I didn't have a co-anchor. And so it's I'm on my own.
Oh.
And I did finally get to the next story, but it was really hard. And maybe sometime I'll share that story. But it just was just a very traumatic event that happened. And I thought I was okay because it was the pressure of getting I got the information 10 minutes before we went on the air, and then we went on the air and I reported it, and then it kind of hit me. And it was a teenager who was in an accident. And anyway, so we trying to go to the next story, and I remember hearing afterwards that there was somebody, the camera guy goes is she going to be okay? What do we need to do? And it was live television. Friday night, 9:00 show. And it was awful. And I had people come up later and did you know the person? I'm like, no, I did not know the person. But it was just the circumstances surrounding it that hit me. And so, yeah, I've cried on TV a couple of times. And that is usually, you just don't see people get very emotional in those jobs. But I was not most people.
But also, caught off guard, what you were just saying. I had this recovered memory of this must have been 2011, still pretty new on the council. I think we've talked about that when my husband was in the studio. I was 4 weeks old on the council when he got shot. So most of that all of that experience, all but 4 weeks, was colored through that lens of now I'm married to this survivor. Anyway, it's crazy. So literally 2 minutes, maybe, before the council meeting starts, I'm told that they're going to do this surprise. They all knew it, and didn't think of maybe what that would do to me. Bestow a proclamation, I can't remember what we used to call them, like a citizen appreciation thing. I can't remember what it was called. And it was to this lady who she was this lovely Native American young lady who had been pregnant at the time of the shooting, had been driving by on Anamosa Street, stopped to give one of the officers in the street CPR, and it wrecked her. But they recognized her for that act of kindness, and and there is a prevalence of not trusting law enforcement in the Native American community. So it was a really beautiful thing that she stopped and did that. And right before the meeting, they're like, Charity, we want you to read it.
Oh, no.
And
hard no.
I'm in front of the cameras. It's in my hand. And I'm like, oh, shit. And I am bawling through this.
Oh.
And I think one person did it to me intentionally. But I was just like, so I've been in that, all the cameras are rolling, the media's there, all the stuff. And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so I can relate.
That sucks.
It was
I would have
terrible.
totally. In fact, we had an incident recently where they said, we want to do a moment of silence for this person. And I said, are you sure you want me to be the one? I said, I have cried on live TV, just so you know. And they said, it'll be okay. Well, thankfully, there was somebody else willing to do a longer version of this kind of tribute to somebody we'd lost. And all I had to do was a moment of silence. Okay. And so I did just a brief thing. But even in that brief 2 sentences I was reading,
powerful.
I choked up.
Oh, yeah.
But I was super grateful that the person who was closer to the individual and really, I think, wanted to do it. But even she was like, when she got done, immediately started shaking. It was really incredible that she was able to do it at all. She really wanted to be able to do it. Yeah. But I was super grateful that I didn't have to do her part because I was like, even the moment of silence the day before was hard.
It's so incredible how different people can respond to those situations. I remember 2 years ago now burying my father-in-law. And my mother-in-law always said, we talked about this before he passed, and to my son, who's a cellist, and said he would always have loved it if you would play at his funeral. And Alec at first is like, well, I don't know if I can do that.
Oh.
And then he just, on a whim, no music because he does everything.
He doesn't need to, yeah.
And he just says, yeah, I'll do it. And he got up and he did it. I couldn't have done,
no.
I love to sing. And at a funeral, you freaking can forget it.
Yeah.
There's just not a chance I can get it through. Like my daughter, my husband, I don't know who the hell I was talking. Oh, it was my daughter. Yeah, we were talking about, because we just watched, when we were in Breckenridge, we saw Cabaret. I didn't know what that play was about. I was thinking Chicago-esque. So boy, was I in for it. And it was a really heavy, hard play to watch. And so the Holocaust and all that stuff has been on my mind. And we were talking about the play, and I told her about a time in college with Master Chorale, like your brother and I. We would also have to do writing for the programs on the different pieces, and we did a whole segment on music that had been written in concentration camps.
Oh wow!
And you're doing this research, and now you have to go perform this piece that is so emotionally it's making me tear up now. And this was freaking 30 plus years ago.
Yeah.
But it is just so powerful and profound. So there's just not a chance that I could sing it in front of people at a funeral.
I kind of have a rule that either if I sing at a funeral, because I have been asked before and I've done it before, I need to not know the person personally, and they have to be old. Those are my rules. I have broken them a couple of times because a family member really wanted me to do it. And so, but it's still the individual who passed was not somebody I knew, and they were older. And so that made it better. So in those cases, I have to kind of just, you're not supposed to perform per se when you're in that situation. The music in those cases is meant to be a prayer.
Right.
And that's 99% of the time how I'm always going to look at it. But I will, to just get through it, have to tell myself, let's not look at it like a prayer today. I have to kind of put myself in a different mindset just so I can get through those moments. But I totally get it. And yes,
and that's when we have control over our minds, right? And we can okay, I know how I feel like I want to spiral in this direction, but I'm going to take control consciously and I'm going to do this. When people are in amygdala hijack,
it's not that easy.
Not that easy.
Yeah.
So that's the topic of today.
All right.
Yeah.
Are we going 10 to 1 or 1 to 10, or does it matter?
I didn't even number them. Yes, I did. We are going 1 to 10.
All right.
Not in any particular order, but I'm going to talk about it first.
Okay, go for it.
Kind of talk about it first. You've probably heard me reference the amygdala, 2 of them in your brain, but we'll talk about what they are and what they do. And just in case I haven't done that before, I'm not particularly sure if we have or not. But you've heard the term, we know you've all heard the term fight, flight, freeze, appease. So the amygdala are responsible for those responses. And they're small little almond-shaped structures in the limbic part, so the back of your brain, kind of the oldest, more reptilian part of your brain. Primal, good word. Responsible for emotions, memory, motivation, that kind of a thing. And they're especially involved in processing fear and other emotions, like detecting threats. And they'll trigger a body response, like pulling your hand off of a hot stove, or like fear conditioning, like being afraid of water after nearly drowning, or having that reflex after getting rear-ended, or
just doing that kind of made me jump.
Yeah, it did. You did jump. Her face, your eyes spasmed out, like, oh no. Like anger, other negative emotions, also plays a role in learning from emotional experiences and forming associations between stimuli and responses. So in other words, like encoding emotional memories or assigning meanings to different events in our lives. Like we talk about this in the cases of people who abuse and torture and torment and murder other people. And they've had similar upbringings to me, but I'm not running around doing those things to people. So it's very interesting how it works. But it is essential for our survival because it helps us detect and respond to threats quickly, automatically, like outside of our conscious awareness. We are doing it before we even know what's really happening. So like you see a snake on the ground, right? And the amygdala will trigger a fight or flight response that will make you jump back, scream, run away, freeze, whatever the case is. And that response is so fast because it bypasses the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that handles rational and complex thinking, right? And that's why when we talk about this with our orientations with guests here, like, have you ever done anything? And then later you were like, that was totally irrational. I don't understand why I did it. This is why you did that. And I talk to them about that and I help them understand. You're not broken. You're not flawed. This is a natural response. And the more you understand it, the more you can quit beating yourselves up about having those responses to certain situations outside of your control. So it is helpful in that. And there is some research around ACEs and amygdala hijack too, by the way. We happened to just talk about ACEs earlier in this recording today. And the higher your score, likely the higher your response level.
Interesting.
So that's some new research coming out. And experiencing childhood adversity can produce these long-lasting structural and functioning changes in the amygdala, also affecting the hormones involved in amygdala hijack. So it's all connected.
Yeah.
And as a result, the threshold for those emotional reactions in children who are impacted by these situations is lowered due to that repeated sensitization of the amygdala circuits, just like you were talking about with having been through so much loss recently. This is what's going on. And so that means they can be turned off or naturally overly sensitive to different triggers, heightened responses to different things that would someone snaps their fingers and we're like, whatever. And to them, it's like, game on, we're going to fight, or, something, you just never know. And the experiences that contribute to these sensitivities can be events such as poverty, household dysfunction. It can be a factor of poor health or food scarcity. Things like the loss, like painful loss of a parent or a sibling or a grandparent in my case, divorce, witnessing violence in your home or in your community, having a family member attempt or die by suicide, childhood abuse, either emotional, physical, or sexual, child neglect, caretakers with substance use issues, mental health conditions, ongoing exposure to less severe yet chronic daily stressors. So just smaller things, but more over a longer period of time, in other words. And the instability due to parental separation or household members being in jail or in prison. Those are all very common contributing factors. And these responses are important. Can you imagine? I mean, you'd be dead if you didn't have this response. So it is good. I mean, ducking instinctively to save yourself from getting cracked in the head by a baseball or a fist, in my case, is a good thing. But what happens when your entire lifestyle is crisis after crisis after crisis for prolonged periods of time? And it's that state of chronic and continual stress and trauma that leads to what we call here at One Heart crisis brain. So when this is triggered, we experience these aren't the 10 signs yet, heightened cortisol responses. The problem with that is over a prolonged period of time, that can put us at an increased risk for heart problems, high blood pressure, digestive problems, weight gain. None of this we want, right? Also contributes to mental health impairment.
Sure.
Toxic stress, we talk about that all the time here, can play a part in the pathophysiology of mental illnesses such as anxiety and depression disorders, behavioral dysregulation, PTSD, those types of things. Maladaptive changes to brain architecture. That's funny. We have a brain architecture game we're going to play this week with the team. By the way, the psychological changes that accompany toxic stress can actually cause structural changes in the brain. And the way I say this to our guests is it's actually causing brain damage in a literal sense, not just a figurative sense. And it can lead to problems such as memory and learning impairment. So it's really problematic. It can also change which genes are turned on or off, leading to a wide range of health consequences, which is really fascinating. Poor stress management and coping skills on top of all of this, like it impairs our ability to do that. It inhibits our ability to manage these challenging situations appropriately. So when we have time to give pause and have logic weigh in, it's like, oh, well, if this happens again, I can handle it this way. And then it happens and it's like, boom, back to autopilot, back to what our brain is wired, how our brain is wired to respond. And it's like, damn it, it happened again, right?
Autopilot, I think, is a really good analogy. Yeah.
It is. Chronic stress, by the way, it's actually been found to decrease brain volume and causing loss of synapses and impacting brain function. So when we talk about brain structure, brain function is also impaired. And so the amygdala on the plus side will help us survive. But sometimes our histories, our traumas, and all of that have created overworked and abused neural pathways, and that response can backfire on us. And it causes us to overreact to situations that maybe really are not that threatening, or maybe to act impulsively without considering the consequences of that. And when this gets triggered, we can get stuck in that high state, high stress, anxiety, or panic, and we can't even access our higher functioning cognitive abilities where we could plan or problem solve or rationalize it out, right?
Right.
We become more reactive, defensive, rigid, and less creative, flexible, and collaborative. We also tend to focus on the negative aspects of the situation and ignore the positive ones. Or potential solutions. So that's pretty common. So if some of these descriptions are raising some alarm bells for you listeners, maybe there is someone in your life that is displaying these symptoms, or maybe you yourself are feeling this, calling your own behaviors into question. So we are going to go through, can we take a break now?
Sure.
Because I really have to pee. And then we'll come back and then go into the 10 signs.
On that note, stay with us in the Escape Pod. PSA time. To learn more about the One Heart campus, where we help people escape crisis mode and achieve self-sustainability, visit oneheartrc.org. Welcome back into the Escape Pod. Charity got a little break, needed break.
This is what happens. I think I'm so much more fun with caffeine, and we've all established that my bladder cannot handle it. So it starts to revolt and inflame, and it's just not a good time. But
it's okay. The beauty of this is that I can cut out the breaks and things of that nature. So
10 signs.
10 signs of amygdala hijack.
That a person in your life is in crisis brain mode. Okay. In no particular order.
Okay.
Number 1, They have a disproportionate emotional reaction to a situation.
Okay.
For example, they may explode with anger, burst into tears, freeze in fear over something that seems trivial or manageable to other people.
Okay.
So some specific examples drilling down, like getting angry at a boss who criticizes you in front of coworkers, then quitting your job
Yeah.
instead of trying to resolve it. Getting into road rage. We've talked about road rage. Wasn't that our last episode?
Yeah.
After a car swerves in your lane, then throwing your smoothie in their window.
Yeah.
Like an overreaction, right? Instead of just going, okay, I swerved out of the way. Things are good. No car accident. It's all good. No, getting a phone call that a loved one is in the emergency room, then becoming so distressed that you don't hear the details. Yeah, you panic and you can't hear. We talked about that earlier. Getting angry and yelling at your boss in front of your coworkers. Probably not smart, right? Throwing your jacket across the court after losing a tennis match. Racket. I can't read. You can throw your jacket too. Whip that court with your jacket.
No judgment.
Racket,
whatever you're throwing.
Yeah. I know my husband does this with golf clubs. This is why he doesn't golf a lot, because
he gets mad and
he throws, Happy Gilmore style. Slamming a can open on the counter after becoming frustrated. I used to do this stuff a lot when I would it just doesn't work out. I can't tell you how many curling irons I've broken. And
really?
I had a really crazy temper as a youngster. Yeah.
I do have a kiddo. I don't believe he's in crisis brain. I think he's just hasn't learned yet that, like, for example, he stubs his toe on a chair leg. He wants to kick the chair leg.
Yes.
I'm like, buddy.
Yes.
Doesn't hurt anybody but you. But it's his initial reaction.
Me as a kid, yeah.
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 And not with everything. He wouldn't overreact to everything. But it's a funny, like, oh, that hurt me. And the physical pain, he just wants to hurt the thing back. And I'm like,
and it's not rational, right?
Someday
it's just that little moment. So he's not in crisis brain. Yeah.
He's in an undeveloped brain for sure,
Right,
because his age is, he's still pretty young, but it's funny. I mean, it's funny. And then you have to kind of keep yourself from laughing, because that makes him even mad.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody who's hurting wants to be laughed at.
No.
Nobody. Yeah.
Nope. Not good. All right. Number 2. They have difficulty expressing themselves clearly or coherently. For example, they may stutter, ramble, repeat themselves, talk in circles, or use vague or ambiguous language. They may also have trouble listening to others or understanding what they're saying. Okay. Number 3, they have tunnel vision or lose sight of the big picture. For example, they might focus on one aspect of the problem and ignore everything else, or might get stuck on a couple little details and miss the whole main point.
Okay.
They might also have trouble seeing other perspectives or alternatives. It's just like that narrow blinders on tunnel vision.
Okay. Also not able to see maybe consequences.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So that you're not getting, like you say, big picture.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you make a decision based on this limited viewpoint, and then you don't understand why
there's
it's not going to work out because you're missing 90% of the picture. Number 4, they have cognitive distortions or biased thinking. For example, this might look like exaggerating the negative, minimizing the positive, jumping to conclusions, blaming themselves or others for everything. They may also have a very black and white type of thinking, like seeing things in absolute terms, such as always or never.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I've had 2 conversations with staff this week, 2 different staff members on that exact thing.
Interesting.
It's like, okay, well, let's look at this logically.
Yeah.
Which, when you're in that mode, it's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Number 5, they have impaired memory or recall. For example, they might forget important information, misremember facts, mix up events. They might also have trouble learning from their mistakes or applying feedback that you've given them.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that'd be a really good indication that they're in crisis brain.
Okay.
Number 6, they have reduced creativity or innovation. For example, they might rely on old habits or routines despite something else being better for them, like they're resistant to those new changes or new ideas. They might also have difficulty generating solutions in that situation or even finding opportunities in that situation. Number 7, they have poor judgment or decision-making capabilities. For example, they might act impulsively or recklessly or procrastinate or avoid taking action altogether. They might also make hasty or irrational choices and then regret those decisions later. And this is what we see a lot in our guests.
Indeed.
Yeah. Number 8, they have low motivation or engagement. For example, they might lack energy, enthusiasm, or interest in a task, a goal, a project. They might also have difficulty starting, continuing, or finishing the work or meeting a deadline or an expectation.
That can also be confused sometimes and might be coexisting conditions like depression.
Yeah.
It might be a little more chronic mental health issue than interesting.
Yeah. Number 9, they have diminished empathy or social skills. For example, they might be insensitive, rude, or hostile to others, or withdraw or isolate themselves. They may also have trouble communicating, cooperating, or collaborating with others, and giving or receiving support or feedback.
I see that happening when we've talked about people, no particular person in general. I think you see this kind of thing when an adult has been abused, for example, and then they know a child who's been abused and they want to kind of set it aside. And I would think that is their brain. That's a defense mechanism, right? It's trying to protect them from maybe they are saying like, hey, I've moved on, you can move on too. But have they moved on? Or is that their way of trying to like keep their own memories at bay?
It could be that. You also see the opposite where they've endured a tremendous amount of abuse and they see one thing in a parent-child interaction that reminds them of that and they overreact and assume and accuse.
The same thing is happening when maybe it's not.
When maybe it's not.
Yeah.
So it's, boy, it's hard.
Yeah. Number 1.
10.
Okay, whatever.
We started with 1. Okay. Number 10, they have physical symptoms or health issues. So like they might have a lot of headaches, stomach aches, muscle tension, fatigue. They might also have changes in appetite, sleep, or weight, or experience more illness or infections. This is a true statement. So when I was practicing as an engineer, I had some challenges with a higher up in that firm. And I was manifesting, not consciously, the weirdest illnesses. Like I can't even explain it. Doctors didn't know what to do with me. And this is how I realized what I was doing, that I was causing all these illnesses. I was walking down the hall one day towards my cubicle, and I sped up past this man's office. And I got to the other side of that door and I went, this is what I'm doing. I am doing things to prevent me from having to interact with him because he was such a creep. That's what it was. And I was like, oh, but once you're aware of it, you can do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
internalizing.
And please note that these signs and what we've just talked about, they're not exclusive. They're not the end all be all. And they may vary. Everybody's different in how they respond. But these are kind of some commonalities that you can think of. But they can serve as indicators that someone in your life is in a state of high stress and maybe needs help. But we can also talk about the things that you can offer if you know someone that's in that situation, because there are ways to help people who are in crisis brain, both short-term and long-term. And in the short term, the goal is to calm down the amygdala and restore that balance between the emotional and rational parts of the brain. And longer term is to obviously help deal with those triggers and things like that, which probably is going to require a little additional help. But we'll talk about some of those ideas and strategies right now.
Okay.
So number 1, breathing deeply and slowly. Like we've done this, right? We've had a hell of a journey with this project called One Heart and a lot of emotion and blood, sweat, tears, all this stuff. So breathing deeply and slowly at times has been a must. Okay, we're going to breathe through this. We're going to get through this. And that can lower your heart rate, your blood pressure, and your cortisol levels, more importantly. And it can activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for relaxation and recovery. So it might sound cliche, like, just breathe. But there are so many health benefits to actually breathing intentionally. It really isn't cliche. It's just, so it really is viable and valid. Number 2, taking a break or giving yourself a timeout. just do it. That can create some distance from that stressful situation or that trigger and allow the person to regain their composure and perspective. And if you can intervene before they do something they're going to regret, even better. And okay, let's go do this together and be with them and walk with them through that timeout can be also really valuable. Number 3, seeking support or comfort from someone who is trusted and empathetic, such as a friend, family member, colleague, even a therapist. We offer up our on-site clinician all the time to staff who might be struggling with some personal issues or just, sometimes the work, the vicarious trauma from our work piles up, and go talk to them. And the less alone you can help someone feel and the more understood you can help someone feel, the quicker you can get them out of that cycle, at least for that moment or that situation.
We also have one of our departments, he would call it constructive vent sessions. So it's not just a weekly check-in. It's an opportunity to lay it out there. And I think even the name of it kind of helps, because sometimes we really just, every once in a while, you just got to get it out of your system, right?
Yep.
You have to say it out loud. You need to feel the feels. And it's amazing how then afterwards you can go okay, let's go on with our day.
But when you do that in partnership with somebody who's got your back, they're not going to let you walk off the ledge, right? They're not going to let you throw a punch at somebody or do something you're not going to be able to walk back.
Or send the email. Or my husband said once, best advice I ever got was write the email and then read it in the morning before you hit send.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you don't send those emails.
Nope.
Yeah.
And I'm so paranoid when I do that. I won't even put a to in the
correct.
No email. It's just the body of the message.
Yep. I think he said.
And we do
really
it as a team
advice.
constantly. Okay, I've got to send this response. Here's my initial response. Will you please read it?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have done that before.
Many, many times.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4, practicing mindfulness or meditation, which can help the person focus on the present moment.
Yeah.
Kind of observe what's going on without judgment or attachment, kind of as an objective, I'm looking at this from the outside instead of feeling it. Sometimes you just need to remove yourself from that. And it can just help them become more aware of their triggers and reactions and just inherently start to reduce those negative emotions.
Yeah.
Number 5, engaging in physical activity or exercise. How many times have you seen me, someone spiral? Let's go. We're going to go for a walk. We're going to walk around the block, right? That can help release endorphins, which are happy brain chemicals, and other neurotransmitters that can help improve mood and cognition. It can also help the person burn off excess energy and tension and increase their confidence and self-esteem. We all feel good after we've done something. We've moved our bodies. There's something truly cathartic about that. So
I joked in the fall when I was walking regularly with a friend who lived close to me that I'm not paying for therapy sessions because I'm walking. 3 times a week with her.
Yeah.
And it really was, it's amazing
It is.
how good that can feel.
yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. All right, number 6, recognizing and naming the emotion when it happens can also shift connections back to the frontal lobes because you're identifying it. It requires that use of language and analysis, and even simply stating, I am mad, I am angry, I am frustrated, I am whatever, could be enough to make that feeling less intense and start to bring you back into that rational brain. I used to do this technique with, and I don't know if I can explain it over audio. I'm going to try. I learned it in getting certified as a coach to balance out the hemispheres of the brain. So I applied it in the real world, not with just clients, but with students. They were students. They were incarcerated young people, detainees, whom the judge mandated you get your GED or you're staying in jail. Okay. So I would go in, I would tutor the detainees. And when someone was struggling, let's say, with literature, English, that side of things, okay, that's very right-brained. They must be in their left hemisphere. Let's see if we can balance these out and maybe they can understand these concepts a little bit better. So if you imagine, I'm going to have you do this, clasp your hands together.
We've done
Have
this
we done
before.
this?
You've done
I've done
this
it with
me
staff
before.
probably
Yes.
too, right? It's so powerful. Okay, so, and then you look at, okay, my left thumb is crossed over my right thumb. What's yours?
Mine's right over left.
Right over left. Okay, now switch it. Switch all of it. And it feels weird.
It does feel weird.
Because you're driving to the opposite side of your brain. And then you keep doing that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until you can't remember which way you started. And then all of a sudden, those hemispheres are balanced out. That is when I could get through, like with math or whatever. I would help them balance out those hemispheres. And it's like suddenly they're not stupid young people. They're like, oh, I can get this. I taught a kid to read doing that. It's like you get so stuck in a certain way, and especially with the traumas that these children have endured. It was just a cool tool. I didn't explain to them how it was working. I'm just like, hey, get your hands out. Let's do this.
Yeah.
They're like, what? And then all of a sudden they could learn better.
It's like a brain break.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need that break from what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And there's a deeper purpose to it, but you just got to get them to do it, do something differently. I see tremendous value sometimes in giving something a name. And in my experience, I do internalize a lot of stress. And when I was both in high school, but particularly it got really bad in college, where I would, if I was stressed out about something and I didn't get a good night's sleep, I would inevitably wake up and be sick to my stomach. I would always say, I'm not throwing up food. It's like stomach acid. It was really weird. And my college roommate, in fact, would say, are you okay? Like, do you need to see a doctor? And I was like, no, it's just a stress thing. And I kind of knew what would cause it.
Like, were you swallowing down your stress? Like,
kind of, yes.
And
but
you need to purge it, right?
Here's what eventually, so then fast forward a few years, I was out of college. I was in the working world, but I had a boyfriend and we broke up. And suddenly here I am again, not sleeping well, feeling like physically not feeling great when I'd wake up in the morning and throwing up. But again, never food. To the point that I thought I must have an ulcer. And I was sure that's what it was. So now I didn't even go to a doctor. There was a clinic at the time that was run by a couple of nurse practitioners. And they were kind of amazing women, really good at listening to you.
Sure.
And I spent a lot of time with this one, and she asked a million questions about, like, does this trigger it? Does this trigger it? A lot of foods, like, and I said, no, it's not a food thing. It's like I get stressed out. If I don't sleep well, like a lot of times it'll happen in the morning. And she's like, here's what I think. I think you have acid reflux, and I think your acid reflux is triggered by stress. And she's like, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you a prescription. You only take it as needed. So if you get sick one morning, take it that night. See if you get sick the next day. I probably took 5 pills over the course of a year. And I've never had to do it since. And I think it was because then I knew what was doing it.
You called it out.
Yep.
Once
I knew this is how my body reacts to this, I dealt with it. And yes, I needed medication, but now I don't need, because it's like, it is a little bit more mind over matter.
Yeah.
But it was the weirdest thing. And I was so appreciative of her for just saying, you know what I think it is? And let's try this and just do it as needed. I'm not going to tell you to take it every day. Just if it happens, take the pill and maybe take like 2 days in a row and see if it happens again.
Sure.
And I felt cured in a couple of months. I was just like, this is amazing. I never needed the full prescription.
Cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. And to this day, I feel like if I don't sleep well, I will sometimes wake up and not feel great. But now I know why, and it just makes a huge difference. But
It's
that happened
that
for
unknown,
years,
right? And then
it
you're
was
doing
the unknown.
Oh my gosh, is it something more serious? Blah 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 blah. Or what if they can't figure it out? And, yeah.
Nope. It was really a very simple fix. And so that's where when you said that, like sometimes giving it a name helps. I was like, basically I had a diagnosis. And once I knew the diagnosis, I was a new person. Like it helped tremendously. And I'm always kind of grateful for her. I have a huge kind of spot in my heart for, like the nurse practitioners or PAs. They don't have the MD behind their name, but when they listen and they're very knowledgeable.
I've had really good experience.
Yeah,
with
like
PAs
you
too.
just feel like, oh, like we're not just throwing random things at it. Not that doctors do that either. I know some really great doctors too, but in that case,
Right.
it just happened to be a higher level nursing degree, and she was just awesome. And it was a pretty simple fix, and I really appreciated that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted your list.
I like
Keep
it.
going.
No, I love the back and forth. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 7. So the chemical that's involved in the amygdala response, it can take a while for it to dissipate, but it does dissipate. So if you delay any kind of response, if you can at least remember that, I'm having this reaction, I'm going to count to 6 before I do anything, you might actually be able to switch that conscious control of what's going on and not end up doing anything you're going to regret.
So when my mom used to tell me to count to 10.
Yes. And
She
plus
was
normally
right.
you're breathing too. So it's like, okay, I'm going to count and I'm breathing.
Count to 10, Julie.
Yes,
Count
yes.
to 10. Keep going if you have to.
Exactly. All right. Number 8 is the change of scenery.
Yes.
Getting up, moving around,
Believe it.
getting out of wherever you're stewing or steeping in that thing anything that's reactivating the part of the brain that's already fired up.
Yeah.
Go change of scenery it can work wonders.
Huge.
Yeah. Number 9, when feeling a lot of emotions, talk to somebody. Share your feelings with a trusted person. It can split that mental load, and then it makes your amygdala feel less threatened because you're now like, oh, wait, there's a couple things going on at the same time here. And then that response starts to reduce and diminish, which is a good thing. And also the use of language in highly emotional situations, just like you talked about with that stress and stomach link. Again, it's shifting the energy from the reactivity part to the I'm thinking about this part, and it starts to, then those stress and the body issues associated with that stress start to diminish too. That's pretty cool.
100%. I believe
So those are some of the short-term strategies that can help someone in crisis brain calm down, regain control, and how you can help them if they're important to you. And in the long term, the goal is to prevent or reduce the frequency and intensity of that crisis brain or the amygdala hijack and enhance your resilience and your well-being. And some of those strategies we're going to go through next. I just have like half a dozen of those or so.
Okay.
I lost my place. Okay, here we are. All right, number 1, identify if you can and address the root causes of the stress like you did with your issue, such as personal, professional, environmental factors. Sometimes people have a really difficult time understanding or being able to separate, like, let's say I'm at work or I'm at home when I'm feeling the feels and I'm getting triggered, but the thing that's causing it isn't at that place. It's something you've brought with you. So it does pay. And then sometimes talking to somebody and trying to sort out where is that coming from can be really, really helpful. And that it puts the power back in your control. You can make changes and decisions based on once you know what you're contending with. So that'd be the first thing. The second thing, develop coping skills and strategies, positive self-talk, problem solving. And sometimes we need help to do this until we can do it on our own. It's just like anything else. We didn't come into the world knowing how to do anything we do now. We needed help. Time management, assertiveness, help you take control. And this person might also benefit from learning some relaxation techniques, yoga, massage, aromatherapy, anything like that.
Oh, I could go for a massage right now.
I could too. I really could. My vacation screwed up my schedule, so yeah, I used to go every 3 weeks, and I'm lucky if I go every 3 months now. All right, next one. Third, building a support network. Okay.
Makes sense.
Joining a club, a group, having a good group of friends to support you through situations. And it'll just help you balance things out when you're in that cycle long term, because it's like you said, walking with your friend is like therapy, right?
Yeah.
I have a group of girlfriends that I get together with, and I feel it when, like right now, we're not doing that on a regularly recurring basis like we normally used to do back in the day. And it's just like,
It's like you don't, when you're doing it all the time, you feel like, if I have to miss or whatever, it's not that big of a deal. But when it goes a long period and you miss you notice it. I had a mom's group at church that very much filled my need for, and in those cases, all of us pretty much had younger kids. And that's a time in your life where you really feel like you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And to have that support kind of system was incredible. Now I work full time. At the time I just worked part time, or the schedule I had, it was easier to go. But now, I still see those people. I'm still friendly with those people. I don't get to go to the group, but they also are still lifelong friends.
Right.
So even though it's not the same situation, I know if I needed them, that is still a place I could go back to. Some of those people I could still call on. And it's hard when you feel like you don't have that.
Very hard.
Yeah.
It's like adrift, lost.
I haven't moved a lot in my life. I always have a heart for people who we just moved here. Oh, I can't. It's so hard to make friends, especially when you're older.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, I have a lot of compassion for folks who get dropped into a new place and it's what do you do?
What do you do?
It's hard. Yeah.
It is hard. Okay, number 5, pursuing a purpose and a passion, find a meaningful or fulfilling job, which is kind of like therapy in and of itself. You
Sure.
love what you do every day, or a hobby, project, or a goal, just setting a goal that you're enjoying working towards.
Volunteerism.
Yeah.
That can be a big thing.
Absolutely.
That people will do.
But it helps you explore your, what you're made of, your strengths. You get some wins. You start to feel like it builds that confidence, kind of like an immunization against the toxic stress, because you have this capital that's weighing in a positive direction for you.
Yeah, for sure.
And the 6th one is sleeping habits. Focus on that. Proper sleep can help with memory retention. I teach this to our guests.
Yeah.
Learning ability, regulate your metabolism. All the things, the branches help you grow the branches in the brain, cells that convey information from, along the synapses and all of that kind of a thing. So sleep is good. Literally walk our guests through why sleep, why we have an 11 o'clock curfew, all of that to help restore and make them healthier.
We had a guest do an amazing job. She was part of our guest panel at a summit we did for the community a couple months ago. And one of my favorite things that she said was, was about the sleep and the curfew. And now I like going to bed early. She almost did it. She made it sound like she didn't even know.
She was surprised.
She was surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
I
just
need to leave
realizing
where
that.
I'm at because, and she said at first it was the rule that made her come back. She didn't want to get discharged because she was breaking a rule. But over time, and it didn't take her very long, she was like, I actually like that I have to come back because it turns out I like to be asleep by 9 or 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it was one
So
of the
do I.
cutest things that she said. I'm not a great sleeper. I did way too many years working at night, but it's important. And that is one of the things my husband, the sleep deprivation he faces in his job.
Shift work is awful. Yeah.
So it's one of those things where when he goes on vacation and he gets to sleep normally, it's almost, you can sense a tremendous
Absolutely.
difference in him. Yeah.
I don't experience it that much now.
Right.
My husband has done shift work in the
Correct.
past, and he did it as an engineer. He would work nights.
Oh, interesting.
And I would work days so that our daughter didn't have to be in daycare all the time. So we get it from that context. And then, of course, as a police officer, same deal. The only time now is when he's on call and it's a really active night. So his phone was going off a lot last night. Thus, me having caffeine today because I slept in a little bit later. I usually get up at 4 with no problem. It was 4:37 when I finally pulled my butt out of bed. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be a day. And I knew I had a full calendar. So I did a little bit of white tea and my bladder's already going, come on. And that's the lowest amount of caffeine. And it just doesn't matter. It hates me. It hates me, hates me, hates me. But I love it so much.
Your body hates the caffeine.
Yes.
Yes.
My brain digs it.
Caffeine does not hate your body because caffeine can't feel things.
I think it hates me. Yeah.
Well,
and I'm like, seriously, I am not a big drinker. If I could choose giving up caffeine or alcohol, I would gladly give up alcohol in order to have caffeine. So I cannot have caffeine. I do it. I pay the consequences. And I also cannot drink much.
Yeah.
I mean, we went to Deadwood with friends a few weeks ago, and picked up the end of a concert, went to dinner, literally 3 drinks all night from 3 o'clock to 10 o'clock. I was blitzed and I was so sick the next day.
Oh, no.
So I can't have either. It's just ridiculous. So I've got to find something else. I don't know what it is yet that I can give me that. I don't know. It's stupid.
Maybe people have thoughts.
Or a bladder transplant. Can I do that?
I don't know if I'd want to have to do that.
Well, it's tempting. If you could feel what I feel right now, you might.
I think our listeners might have some ideas for you. So please, you can write in at justbecaus@escapepod.live. If you are an escape artist, if you've had to escape crisis brain yourself or some other trauma, escapeartist@escapepod.live. And all you other listeners, our website, escapepod.live, rate, review, subscribe. You can listen
5
to podcasts
stars,
on a
please,
variety of platforms. Ratings are good. 5 stars would be great. I think I've offered to dance if we get.
Hey, we will post
stars.
a video to social media if we get
Cabbage Patch,
5 stars.
Roger Rabbit.
Julie
I have some from my
moves.
teenage days.
She sure does. Mm-hmm. We have witness. I probably have video somewhere.
I can make that sprinkler. On that note,
also just real quick, if you do write in, let us know if you're okay with us sharing your story, so we don't have to do a lot of back and forth. Just, hey, I just wanted to share this. And yes, it's okay to say it on the podcast.
You're welcome to air it. That's all we need to hear.
Yeah.
And then we will. Or we're welcome to air it. Maybe you want to change the name or something. We'd be okay with that too. But a lot of people don't care.
Yeah. Don't use my name. Keep it anonymous. Use whatever guidelines you need in order for us to share. We would appreciate that.
We will work with it. We are closing the hatch on this episode of the Escape Pod. Remember, trauma may be inevitable. How you grapple with it is optional.
So remember to stay resilient
and keep laughing.
Thanks, everybody.